What was the thing that caused me to leave Islam last? And that's the thing that I want to focus on more now. Why did I leave Islam last? Why was Islam the last religion I looked into? The reason being is, and I will say it quite frankly, was the hypocrisy of the Muslims themselves. My only friend that was a Muslim was a drug dealer. That was my major influence in Islam, a Muslim drug dealer. So think about yourselves now for a moment. What's your impact to the non-Muslims around you? Because we can hide ourselves from our own community. Sometimes people are shy about their sins in front of other Muslims, in front of their uncles and aunties, because they don't want them to find out. But in front of non-Muslims, they act freely. But they forget those non-Muslims are not stupid. They can see your sins. They can see what you're doing. One of the biggest hypocrisies, because you guys are in university, so I'm going to address it to you guys, yeah? And I don't mean this to target anyone or anything. Brother Hamza hasn't pointed anyone out, like that brother in the third row there. I'm just joking, he didn't say anything. But yeah, he hasn't pointed anyone out. But one of the biggest hypocrisies that I find, I used to work in a masjid, and one of the most silliest things I thought was absolutely ridiculous was when the brothers and sisters were walking up and down the stairs, because we're working in the same building. It was like, like, Assalamu alaikum sister, yeah, just, walk past. And then when they walk out and they're going home, it's like, oh, do you want to grab a bite to eat? And it's like, what are you doing? Like, where is the consistency here? Like, I'm not trying to preach either side here, saying, be ultra conservative and don't talk to anyone of the opposite gender. Nor am I saying be super liberal, but there needs to be some consistency here. What's the point of having divides in the prayer room and having a physical barrier when you leave the prayer room, everyone's just mixing and chatting and having jokes? Like, it's a serious question. For Muslims, it might make absolute sense. But for non-Muslims, they're just looking at you like, this is an absolute joke. Like, what are you doing? And I want you guys to reflect on that. Although I've highlighted this issue, it applies to every single issue. That your actions are a da'wah to every single non-Muslim. So you need to have a level of consistency. There needs to be like a standard that what's acceptable in the prayer room is what's acceptable outside of the prayer room. By no means am I saying, at the same time, it's not like, we're in Saudi Arabia and we can't even go in the same shops and things like that. Like, there's a level of realism we need to have with our attitudes and behavior. We're in a Western society. Some brothers, I said to a brother the other week when I was giving one of these talks, I said to the brother, it's all well and good being super conservative, but when you go work for a business and, you have to be in a... Okay. When you have to be in a work environment and there's men and women there, you have to be a bit realistic. So you need to... I think the biggest problem, the biggest fitna that we have in the West is not free mixing, it's the lack of understanding how to communicate with the opposite gender. Yeah? Brothers, don't look to that side of the room, and sisters, don't look to this side of the room and think that's a potential marriage partner. Like, that's the wrong... You already started on the wrong foot. That's my brother in Islam, that's my sister in Islam. End there. And, if you just have that in mind, you'll be okay. If you have the, the marriage bug, then, you got a problem. For you don't talk to anyone. You stay in a little hut. So, yeah. I'll move on swiftly from that point. But you get the message that our actions are a negative da'wah to the non-Muslims. And one more point that I almost forgot to make on that is the biggest evidence to this. I said last week that, the Sahaba, when they used to travel to lands, only 80 years after the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ's death, do you think the Sahaba knew how to speak Hindi? No, they didn't know how to speak Hindi. They spoke Fusha and that was it. Maybe they learned a bit of Farsi, but they spoke Fusha predominantly. They traveled to India 80 years after the death of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and Imam al-Dhahabi quotes that there was a big muhaddith in India. His laqab was Al-Lahuri. Yes, so shout out to the Pakistanis in the room. Yeah, you were one of the first muhaddithin from the Indian subcontinent. But let's just not talk about the Sahaba. Indonesia has a 99% Muslim population. They became Muslim because a few Gujaratis came there and done business. And they were impressed by their adab. So now we're not talking about the Sahaba, we're talking about people more relatable to us. They didn't speak Indonesian. Like, is there any Gujaratis here? Is your language anything like Indonesian? So it was purely upon adab and etiquette and correct business mannerism that these people converted to Islam, and Islam spread like wildfire in that country. That is probably one of the most Islamic countries on the planet right now. You know, they've booked Nu'man Ali Khan. He's like their sheikh now. So that's my point.